Live. Everywhere. On netrootsradio.com. David Waldman. Kagro. In the morning. Now, here's David Waldman.
Hey, good morning, everybody. How you doing? It is Thursday, June 19th. It's Juneteenth. Happy Juneteenth. June 19th, 2025, in case you forgot what year it was. I nearly did. And I am back on the air live, and I don't feel live, but it's true. That is to say, I haven't recorded anything for you previously. And what a week, any week really, that you leave for any reason during the Trump era is likely to leave you way, way, way behind on the news. And of course, you know, we were off in tropical paradise, as it were, in the U.S. Virgin Islands, and in an Airbnb where the only, you know, television connection was, well, you could watch Netflix. It was like I don't know, one of the smart TVs, so smart that it wouldn't show you any of the channels that are actually on the air there. And I don't even know whether there are still channels on the air, or whether there were ever channels on the air there, for all I know. Everybody's pretty busy, working pretty hard there, as it is. So I didn't catch up on news that way. I had to stay connected via social media, and that wasn't easy to do when you're busy, trying to relax, you know, I don't know whether I even try to disconnect per se anymore, but it was going to be unlikely that I was going to totally disconnect, given what we knew what was going to happen, which when I left was, well, things were going to get worse, obviously, and that the big stupid parade was going to happen, and that was likely to have all sorts of repercussions. If it went smashingly well, people would be annoyed and upset about that. If it went horribly and nobody attended, then Trump would be angry about that, and he would take it out on people, and I wasn't sure how I wanted things to go there. But also, the next round of nationwide coordinated, every city and every state protests against the Trump regime. And that was, of course, scheduled many months ago. They have an ongoing schedule, and there will be more, and you'll have your chance to do it again. But that coincided with the big dumb parade, and so that was made for an interesting effect as well. And then, of course, your general Trump-era fallout continued. ICE raids, continued protests against them, continued arrests and detentions of Democratic elected officials who were trying to involve themselves in the lives of their constituents and trying to protect their rights, and finding themselves on the other end of what are increasingly looking like secret police arrests for no good reason. And of course, it escalated to the ultimate threat against Democratic elected officials with murders in Minnesota. So there's quite a bit. I don't know. We'll see what we can comment on. By this time, it's old news for you, and I don't know if there's anything I'm going to be able to add from the perspective of having heard from a million miles away. Oh my God, this happened. But more has happened, and it is Thursday, and there'll be plenty to catch up on. And as a matter of fact, Greg Dworkin is, I should have found some sort of Calypso, I wonder if, can I look for a Calypso fanfare of some kind? I don't know if that would necessarily be appropriate, but hello and welcome, Greg, as I scramble to try to look for something fun to play for you. How are you? Oh no. Why don't I hear you? How about that? That's a good question. Is that not happening?
No, it's happening.
Okay.
It's just,
there you go. All right.
I put you on mute
okay.
Just so you could get ready for the show without my annoying you, and I forgot to unmute the microphone.
You forgot that I was...
Do not try this at home. We're professionals.
You forgot that getting ready for the show after a week is going, all right, I
was already had everything lined up. I just forgot to hit that button. You know, you should play Harry Belafonte. I'll take Sonora. We'll do Kagro, Kagro, Kagro 3 times and see who shows up.
Yeah. You know what I should now that I understand that the general to whom they're listening most in the Pentagon about Iran,
the gorilla.
Magilla Gorilla. I figured we could use that as I should have just lined up that music. I don't know how Hanna-Barbera feels about it, but I think we can get away at least with calling him Magilla Gorilla. And, apparently he was from Central Casting once again in their view. And so that's the guy you want to listen to. He's a big guy.
Well, the important thing about
square-jawed, yeah,
isn't who they're listening to. It's who they're not listening to.
Oh, well,
so
right.
Both Tulsi Gabbard and Pete Hegseth, who everybody, and for that matter,
Tulsi Gabbard is in the news
too. Governor Puppy Killer, whatever her name is over at DHS.
No. Yeah.
They're all there for show. They're all figureheads. He's not listening to any of them. He basically told reporters, I'm not listening to Tulsi Gabbard. I don't really care what she says.
Yeah, what
Iran
happened
is
there?
Close to a nuclear bomb. Because she's reporting that the intelligence community thinks that Iran isn't anywhere close to having a nuclear bomb.
Oh, I see.
And when asked, Trump said, I don't care what she thinks.
Huh.
That's
okay.
the direct quote. I don't care what she thinks.
Dang.
I know what I know because
me neither, right?
I saw it on Fox News.
Okay. I mean, yeah, you want counsel going in, but
which, by the
hers.
way, brings me to a point you brought up in the intro. The 5 million people demonstrated against Trump in the No Kings, very successful nonviolent protests, and at the same time, 15 people showed up for Trump's parade. 13 of 15 were family members. It was a terrible embarrassment for him, and you wondered who he was going to take it out on, probably around this weekend.
Okay. Well,
because
can
Trump thinks,
that being the case.
and this is not hyperbole. This is not exaggeration. Trump thinks the world is a video game. That's about the level at which he understands things. He was hesitant to get involved because, the biggest blunder is to get involved in a land war in Asia. The second biggest is to get involved anywhere in the Middle East. So he and the MAGA movement wanted to have nothing to do with a war. So Israel ignored him, attacked Iran, went after nuclear facilities in an attempt to lure him in. The Israeli attacks were successful enough that they completely embarrassed the Ayatollah, and they have air superiority over Iran, which is remarkable. We talked about that, I think, just before you left. Okay, Trump looked at it and said, this is successful. I was responsible for it because I need to take credit for anything that looks good. If it failed, plausible deniability, it was their fault. They didn't listen to me. But it's working, so I'm responsible for it. And that being the case, it's more likely than not, with an aggressive Megillah guerrilla general giving him advice and Tulsi being ignored and sidelined, that this weekend, all the assets are in place, he'll bomb Iran. And that's bad.
Yes, I'd say generally bombing just about anybody.
Bomb Iran is bad. McCain used to do that.
Yeah, we gotta.
Lindsey Graham's all for it.
Yeah.
This is splitting MAGA, and we're going to have to spend a little bit of time on because it is, but it isn't. But that's not what I want to start on.
Oh, well, all right then. But I
want to start on one of the other things you missed. And again, I have to add, if you're in the hospitality business, you don't want Kagro X and family online. You don't want them to know what's going on. You don't want them to worry about World War III. You want them to relax, spend money in the restaurants, and then come back another time.
Yes.
So they're going to make it hard for you to connect.
And then congratulations. They did very well with that. And it was fine. I did want to keep in mind, while it was still easy to, quickly say, I should be in a different country immediately and I can swim there. I wanted a heads up if I could get it, but they weren't going to give it.
Well, while you were gone, there was a primary in Virginia, state you might have heard of.
Yes. Never mind.
And
I heard of it.
It was a Democratic primary. It was sort of interesting. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about it. And to set the scene.
Thank you.
Since I don't know much about Virginia.
Yeah.
Okay. I went and I looked up populous cities in Virginia.
Okay.
Because I thought it was interesting.
Yeah.
I happen to have a good friend who lives down in the Norfolk area.
Okay. Hello.
And of the top 6 Virginia cities, number 1 is Virginia Beach by a lot, 453,000.
Okay.
Yes. Chesapeake, I don't even know where Chesapeake is.
Same area, largely.
Okay. Arlington, I know where that is.
Right.
Been there many times. Norfolk.
Yeah.
Richmond. That'll be important. Keep Richmond in mind. Only 229,000, but number 5. Newport News. 183,000. So Newport News, Norfolk, Chesapeake, and Virginia Beach are all in the same area.
Yes. Tidewater,
and
I guess.
If you're a politician from that area, you should have a leg up. If you're a politician from Richmond, LeVar Stoney used to be the mayor. He's one of the people running.
Okay.
You should have a leg up there. But, the Virginia Beach, Norfolk area actually is more populous. So if you're going to run a favorite son or favorite daughter, you want to do it from that area. That being said.
Yeah.
Okay. Here are some numbers, which I thought were just fascinating.
4.
And I tuned in. I sent this to you right when you got home.
The
Democratic primary, 91% of votes in from the AP. Candidate in first place, Ghazala Hashmi.
Well.
At 123,056. Aaron Rouse at 122,661.
Oh.
That's less than 100 away. LeVar Stoney at the time in third place, although ultimately he finished second. 122,601. 60 votes
60
away.
votes.
I mean, it was 26.7, 26.65, 26.64.
Okay. Well,
and so that was
a
three-way tie at the time. Hashmi eventually won by a slight amount. Stoney second, Rouse third. Stoney is from Richmond.
Okay. That name I knew.
And LeVar Stoney, the ex-mayor, might well have won, except everybody in Richmond hates him and they didn't vote for him.
Oh. Well,
they voted for Hashmi.
Is that important really in a democracy?
Yeah, well, there was some scandals. There was a casino issue.
Oh, should have won.
There was, all politics is local, as Tip O'Neill used to say. So Hashmi wound up winning. As far as their policies go, indistinguishable. This is how Bolt's magazine, Taniel, my friend, wrote it up. Virginia Lieutenant Governor. Republicans already know their nominee for Lieutenant Governor, John Reed, a conservative radio show host. We covered him on the show, sole candidate. Glenn Youngkin tried to push him out and failed. Reed has some skeletons in the closet, shall we say.
Okay.
And rumor is there's a whole lot more shoes to fall there, and they're waiting for the fall to drop them. Okay. Meanwhile, Democrats are choosing their nominees. Boltz didn't write that. I'm just adding that. Meanwhile, Democrats, this is what Boltz did say, are choosing their nominee on June 17th in a primary that includes State Senator Ghazala Hashmi, Aaron Rouse, also a state senator, and former Richmond Mayor LeVar Stoney, all of whom largely overlap on major issues, according to WAMU, and differ with Democrats' presumptive nominee for governor, Abigail Spanberger, in wanting to repeal Virginia's right-to-work status.
Okay.
Right-to-work is a misnomer. It's an anti-union thing.
Yes. Right.
And they want to get rid of it. And
it's been a long time.
Governor to be Abigail Spanberger doesn't, because I guess she's running statewide and wants to appeal to everybody.
Okay. Yeah, probably a rock the boat thing. Don't want to, make
in other words, do it after you win.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. If you can. Yes, please. All right. But that's not where she would concentrate her fire in terms of staking out leadership positions. Her thing is elsewhere.
Right.
I get it. Okay.
This is a group called the statenavigate.org. 3 takeaways from the 2025 Virginia Democratic statewide primary. Richmond dominates the primary and takes revenge on Stoney. It became clear in the last stretch of the campaign this was going to be an increasingly Richmond-centric primary. Political insiders thought this boded well for Sharon Taylor, who lost for Attorney General by a small amount. Ghazala Hashmi and LeVar Stoney turned out to be good for Hashmi, bad for Stoney. But the Richmond area is what sunk Taylor and Stoney. Stoney's second worst locality was Richmond City, even placing 4th and 5th in some precincts. And Hashmi won the city overwhelmingly with 58% of the vote. And this looks like the 2023 casino vote, whatever that was.
Oh. I don't know. I guess. All right.
There was also a water crisis. There was also something called Navy Hill. And residents are likely to blame Stoney for all of that. and that Shannon Taylor, who lost the Attorney General, also underperformed in Richmond, and that sunk her. So there it goes. For the first time ever, Clean Virginia has a statewide ticket. The anti-Dominion 501c and PAC has endorsed Spanberger, Hashmi, and Jones, and all of them won.
All right.
So that's good.
Guess that's nice.
And Democrats have a regionally, racially, and ideologically diverse ticket, so it's not dominated by Northern Virginia.
Oh, boo. All right, give them a break, right? Sure. Southern, why not?
First time.
Yeah, and as you mentioned, the big population center, a huge megalopolis, the Tidewater area between, say, Virginia Beach and Chesapeake and Newport News, as you mentioned. Not even to mention Norfolk, but
throw in Hampton Roads if you want.
That's the whole area.
It's a lot of people.
Yes, and a lot of traffic, by the way. Traffic, very important issue in there, Virginia,
too. Yep.
Yes.
So I just thought all of that was interesting, and I thought I'd catch you up while you were away.
Yeah. Oh, thank you, because, yes, I largely missed it, and this helps explain it a little bit. It wasn't a Northern Virginia-focused campaign. It just wasn't, and they concentrated their advertising fire somewhere else because it was like radio silence up here. Because
your candidates weren't running.
Right.
And it was not, an anti-Trump sort of thing. Everybody has the same policy. This was a local issues kind of thing. Which, by the way, is what elections used to be.
Yeah, I like the idea of three people running on more or less normal ideas and platforms. Oh,
and more or less
doing that guy. He's nuts. We're not going to be cooperating with him. But what will we be doing once we get elected? Should we have the privilege to serve? Well, that we'll talk about. Oh, right. How nice, how pleasant.
So let's turn our attention to the currently scheduled for the weekend World War III. This is a piece from The Atlantic. The MAGA coalition has turned on itself, but don't get your hopes up, by the way. And Donald Trump is caught in the middle, says Jonathan Lemire and Isaac Stanley Becker. The MAGA movement usually displays, it says in The Atlantic, remarkable unity in attacking the left, but Israel's military assault in Iran has splintered Trump's coalition as rival factions fight over the true meaning of an America First foreign policy. When they mean rival factions, they mean which influencers are you supposed to listen to?
Yes.
Among the people who are opposing a strike in Iran, interestingly enough, Tucker Carlson, Steve Bannon, whereas Sean Hannity and Mark Levin are pro, Lindsey Graham is pro, Marjorie Taylor Greene is anti-attack. Mm-hmm. I don't know where Joe Rogan has landed on this in terms of the influencers, but it turns out he's really against what Trump is doing with the immigration policy. You think there are a bunch of brown shirts and is saying it loudly. I mean, this is all true when you look at the influencers trying to figure out whether there truly is some splintering of the movement. Mm-hmm. On the other hand, as Greg Sargent points out, Playbook reports that Trump is unfazed by elements of his base opposing the war with Iran. He's certain they'll back him in the end no matter what. And Sargent says that's the way it goes. This is like Republicans opposing the one big beautiful bill, but they'll fold in the end. Trump is the only one who sets the tone here for Republicans. And that's sort of true in terms of the influencers and the electeds following along with whatever he says.
Yes.
But not necessarily the voting public.
Yeah, that's
so I don't
possible.
really care what the insiders in Washington think about that. They're powerless anyway, even the Republicans.
There are a few independently supported influencers and pundits who can afford to separate from time to time, but not to take the full force of an attack.
Yeah, the Russian-funded ones are going to be against it.
Yeah, I guess so. That's interesting.
Russia's very worried that Iran's going to fall, whatever that means.
Okay. Yeah.
An ally, if the government falls, that means that they won't be supporting Russia with the stuff they need to hit Ukraine. So, I mean, this has major implications.
I'd forgotten about that linkage. Just sort of, I was thinking, in the olden days, the influence went in the other direction. Like, well, Russia could use Iran to preoccupy, disturb, and destabilize United States forces elsewhere. Whereas now it's, well, we can buy weapons from them to conduct
the argument from the
war.
neocons is enough is enough. This has been happening for 2 decades. It's time to take them out. And that kind of simplistic thinking is very appealing to somebody like Trump, who doesn't understand anything much higher than a 7th grade level.
And certainly doesn't understand anything that has happened newly in the last 2 decades.
Yeah.
So he'll be sort of stuck in the past that way. Anyway.
So it's kind of scary. We know what Netanyahu wants. He wants a war so you don't pay attention to what he's doing in Gaza, plus his own scandals, which are on hold in the courts during this crisis.
By the
Israel
way,
and Iran
bad
are trading missiles and or airstrikes, missiles from the Iranians because they don't have an air force anymore because Israeli planes took it out. And the bottom line is Israel can destroy the centrifuges in one of the 2 nuclear sites, but they can't really get to Fordo's, the deeply buried one. That takes American bunker busting bombs to do. Israel had a very clever way of taking out the other site. They couldn't necessarily reach the 15,000 centrifuges underground, so they cut the power, which destroyed the centrifuges.
Oh, okay. You know,
you don't have to get in there because without power, all of a sudden these madly spinning things stop.
If they're not
and
spinning,
that sort of
they're no
breaks
good.
them.
I got it. That's a wise alternative. I mean,
so you can break all 15,000 at the same
okay
time just by flipping a switch.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, it's good thinking if you're okay.
See,
with
that's
the
what
thinking
intelligence gets you, and Trump wants to ignore the intelligence and sideline Tulsi Gabbard. I'm just saying.
They don't have this technology. You could just deny it entirely and pretend it doesn't exist. But, well, okay, it's good thinking. They didn't even have to resort to the Top Gun Maverick plan of flying over the mountain and dive bombing it.
No, they were talking about the Star Wars, just
there was a little
flying
bit of Star
the
Wars
X-Wing
in that
with Wedge and Biggs, like, back in the swamp.
I was wondering.
And you drop the bomb down the shaft, and there you go.
I thought they should have sued Tom Cruise for that whole idea. Right. Okay, well, apparently it all comes down to 2 and 3 meter wide ventilation shafts.
Exactly, which you have to hit exactly.
Do try, if you are building a super weapon or space station, if you're going to use the force to try and find some other way to vent the place, because holy cow, instead of venting directly to, the heart of the place. Also, don't pack the whole thing with explosives right in the middle. I don't know why they did that either.
Anyway, unclear as to what's going to happen. And this is one of those complicated things that Trump makes simple. And, again, you understand why politically he's as strong as he is for whatever that's worth, the 30%, the 35%, because he can say, look, Iran shouldn't have a nuclear weapon. It's really simple.
Sure, people like
it's not really simple. But you could say it and it sounds simple.
Yeah.
And he wins on things that sound simple but aren't. Until the consequences hit later, which is why his popularity always drops. Yeah. There is such a big difference, and the polls have been very clear about this, and we'll talk about polls probably after the break if we don't get to them.
Yeah.
If you ask people what Trump says, do you like it? Okay. A plurality, sometimes even a bare majority says, yeah, I like that. For example, on immigration. Trump is supported on immigration. Why? Because Trump says what they're doing is getting rid of the criminals and illegals who shouldn't be here. The criminal element needs to be deported. Who can be against that? But then if you ask the public, well, how about specifics like Abrego or other people by name, or Carroll from Missouri, or the invasion of Los Angeles by the Marines, they don't support that at all. They like Trump's goals, unfortunately, but they do because they sound simplistic, and they don't like the way he's doing it, and in many cases don't like the results. This is not hard to understand. Before Trump, the example probably best to illustrate this would be I want lower taxes and better services. This guy's promising that. I like what he's saying. Yeah. But then he wins, and you look at where you're at, and you either have lower services, which you didn't want. I want more services but less taxes. So you wind up with lower services, or you wind up with he didn't lower the tax as much as I wanted him to. So I liked what he said. I liked more services, less taxes. I'll vote for anybody who can do that. It's impossible. Therefore, once they get here and they see what they're doing, I don't like it.
Yeah. Well, that's
the American public. That's your median voter.
I think that's
and
true.
So, you know, when Trump says, I'm going to do something that you will like because who could be against it? You know, he can persuade a plurality and sometimes a majority to go that way. But when they see what he's doing, this is terrible. You're doing it. You're breaking the law. You have ICE people who look like thugs. They're brown shirts. You're trying to terrorize the population. Now, I don't normally care because if you're trying to terrorize criminals, that's okay. But you're terrorizing Carol. And that's terrible.
Right. And she's not bringing my waffle as a result.
Right. And
now
so to that regard, there's another that I sent you.
Okay.
I could find it. Doesn't mean I could find it.
Well,
Industries with the highest share of workers who are likely undocumented. Landscaping, nearly 20%. Private households,
sounds all right.
17 or 18%. Services to buildings and dwellings, 16, 17%. Crop production, also about 16%. Animal slaughtering and processing, about 15%.
Okay.
So if you got rid of all the workers, food, services to the buildings you live in and your private households,
oh dear,
would disappear.
That would be bad. I would need most of those things.
And that's why Trump said, okay, we're not going to attack those industries. Right. And Stephen Miller said, no, we are. Ignore the president, do what I tell you. And so now they're back to doing that.
Right. Speaking of food, he tacoed, and then he tacoed his own taco later on, which people point out is
as I said,
something
taco
is
isn't
available
just
at
for
Taco Bell. Right. That's true. It can be done elsewhere. And I guess we kind of hope he tacos out of the around more.
The economy is slowing and people aren't going to like it.
Hi everybody, it's me, David Waldman. Yes, the same guy who interrupts you all the time. Interrupting you one more time just to tell you again, another reminder that your contributions are what keep this show on the air, and patreon.com, patreon.com is still among the easiest ways to make the sustaining subscription donations that keep us afloat. Are you ready for the pep talk about how our Patreon campaign is still going strong and growing? Well, too bad. Yeah, the plain fact is we actually are headed in the wrong direction, and whereas we once had about 175 monthly patrons, we're now actually down below 150. Time to recruit some more. Not exactly the kind of news I wanted to share, but there it is. For those of you in a position to support the show, patreon.com does make it easy to make those secure recurring monthly contributions to do so. Patreon.com/KagroX gets you straight to our donation page. We've been through a lot together. The worst of the pandemic, we hope. The worst of the insurrection, we hope. So go ahead and treat yourself. You don't need an excuse. Give yourself the gift of a little something you enjoy in life. Support the show. And of course, if you happen to prefer using PayPal or even the Square Cash app, we're up and running on those options too. So thanks again, everyone, for all your support. We couldn't, or at least shouldn't, do it without you. Hope you'll be on board soon too. Thanks for all your support. All right, welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. I was trying to remember, will I remember what I usually say when I come back from break? And no. I guess kind of autopilot, so it was sort of right. Okay.
We're back. How about
yes,
we're back?
That's true too. We can do it that way. I think I got it correct.
I'll be back. You could try that one.
Yeah. Oh, where's the, I got a fanfare suggestion for you that Scott sent. Can I play this thing? It's in SoundCloud. Sure. Let's see what this is. But I mentioned Calypso, so let's see what this is here. Echo fanfare Calypso. All right, let's see.
Do it.
Oh my goodness. Ooh, nice. Loud. Okay.
Sounds more like a finish than an intro.
Yeah,
but, you know.
It may be oops. Oh dear. Stop. Okay. Oh god, I was gonna have to hit the kill button on that. Oh no. It looked like it may be from is it maybe a video game thing? I don't know. I don't recognize video games. Echo Pass 6, Echo NR, VR, Echo, I don't know what that is. Okay. But it's over now. All right, thanks, Scott. That blew the eardrums out, and then tried to do it again. All right, news, more stuff. There was other things.
So let's talk a little bit about before we get to the polls. And I don't have specifics to send you, but what's coming up is the New York mayoral primary in New York City.
They didn't do that while I was gone? Oh, okay.
No, it's still coming up.
All right. Well, don't...
it's next week, I think.
Yes, look at that. Okay, there we are. Yeah, all right, good. It'll be over soon enough.
And
how long it's going to take him to count these.
Mario Cuomo won't win because he's not running.
Yeah, right.
But one of his sons, Andrew Cuomo, is, and he's leading in the polls.
What are you doing, New York?
The race is interesting because there are some really good commercials, for one thing, which is what you want in a race. I mean, it's got you want good songs, you want good commercials. Policy has nothing to do with it.
And if you're an expert in the race, you're a racist, I think, is what they call it.
Well, there's accusations of that. The top two are Cuomo, unfortunately, and then Zoran Mamdani.
That's kind of a cool name. Okay. Yes.
Mamdani is running second. He is
catching fire.
Pretty far to the left of your typical New York City candidate.
Really?
And he has a lot of support from younger voters.
Yeah, okay.
Who can't stand Cuomo, whereas Cuomo gets the older ones. So it's a question of who shows up. And then probably in third place is a longtime progressive named Brad Lander.
Ah, okay.
You'll know Brad Lander's name because he was just arrested and released by ICE.
Yeah, that was probably a great.
And there was, because he was and is a candidate for mayor, he basically had a official escort, and there were video clips of this. So he goes to an ICE facility. They manhandle him for no reason whatsoever, then accuse him of accosting the police, which is what their usual, go-to complaint is, except it's all on video, and so it just doesn't hold any water.
Right.
So he's held for a few hours. The governor of New York gets really upset, Kathy Hochul, goes there to where he's being held, and this is reported in the news. The guards say to each other, the governor's here, better let him go. So they do.
I was wondering whether they were going to arrest her too.
And, obviously it follows a pattern of trying to intimidate candidates. It doesn't work. It sort of backfires. So one of the things that'll be interesting on the ballot next week is whether or not this has any benefit for Brad Lander. Now, conservatives are accusing him of doing this as a stunt. Of course it's a stunt.
Okay.
When a California senator was manhandled by ICE, it's a stunt. The point is to go and show the public what's going on. The public does not like this. The polls are pretty clear on that. In fact, I have an opinion piece on that called "This is What Makes Protests Successful" by Omar Waysaw and Rob Willer. These are academic research, politics, and protest. The nut graph here: history and research make clear that violence seen as unnecessary, whether it's from the state or whether the protesters, typically reduces popular support for the political player who uses it. The public's rejection of violence they view as unjustified is consistent, so much so it often elicits complex strategic games with movements in the state maneuvering to portray the other as unnecessarily violent. That's why whenever Democrats do anything that Republicans don't like, they accuse them of attacking the police and then arresting them. And it doesn't work if there's video. Important exceptions exist, and understanding when and why nonviolence wins hearts and minds requires understanding of the vast research on the topic. These are the people that do the research on the topic. Okay. Indeed, polling from last week suggests U.S. adults do not like Mr. Trump's approach. In particular, AP North and Washington Post polls showed noticeable drop in voters' estimation of his policies, especially on immigration. That's what we were talking about. They like what he says. They don't like what he does. While Mr. Trump's strongman response to the LA protest plays to his base, it has helped motivate more people to attend Saturday's No Kings protests.
Yes.
Violent tactics used by protesters often backfire too, and they did that, and they showed the law and order data helping to swing 68 presidential election towards Nixon. Of course, I was there and I was part of the protest, and, pretty clear that sometimes it was the police who were torching the cars, but, it's a problem.
Yes.
But the bottom line is whoever is actually seen as causing the violence loses the public. Nonviolent movements are twice as likely to succeed as violent ones, largely because the commitment to nonviolent action allows them to recruit broader support. So that's all important. And so, that's a lot of what's going on. So having said that, it's important to note that Brad Lander did everything right in that regard, showed leadership, showed up where he should. Of course it was a stunt. It's supposed to be a stunt. And you're supposed to leave him alone when he does his stunts.
That's
and when you try to arrest people who do those stunts, you look worse than the person doing the stunt.
Yeah.
And they get far more publicity, sort of a handbook of protest Barbra Streisand effect.
Yeah. I mean, if it's a stunt, then you let them, they're not going to destroy you with their stunt. They're going to perhaps defy your authority, but because, by virtue of their being an elected official, they kind of get away with it. Just get out of their way. They'll get a lot less mileage out of it if you just, follow the field manual. But if you break the rules, then you're going to make that stunt a huge news event. And if you don't want that, then don't do it. But they
this
don't
is
study these
Playbook
things.
who slants everything in favor of Republicans. I'll give you an example here.
Right. Another one.
Megapole klaxon, they say. A new 8,000 person megapole. And by the way, 8,000 people isn't necessarily any more accurate than a 400 person poll if you select and stratify correctly. But there it is. 8,000 person megapole.
All right.
The new MRP, multi-level regression and post-stratification poll by Stack Data Strategy, has the Democrats on course to win a narrow majority in the House.
Hey.
And puts Trump underwater in his handling of the economy, so far predictable. But in the underlying data, there are significant crumbs of comfort for the GOP that suggest Trump could yet bring swing voters around ahead of November 2026. And this incredibly stupid analysis they do is an example of how they slant it toward Republicans. Too long, didn't read. Here's an example. When asked about Trump's assertion that the short-term turbulence will be worth it in the long run for the economy, 42% of voters agreed versus 37% who disagreed. And this was true across the majority of marginal House districts. So, swing voters, they say, could be more open to, notice the word could be more open to Trump's economic messaging than Dems perceive if the economy picks up.
Okay,
Well, fuck that. If the economy is good, he's doing okay, and if the economy is bad, he's not. What kind of stupid analysis is this?
I don't know. That's not, I don't think
Well, we have to make it sound like Republicans are in a stronger situation than they are. Do any economists think that Trump's tariffs are going to help the economy? No.
Well,
it's already slowing. There are bad things happening. Do any economists think that immigration policy that he's doing is going to help the economy? We just went over which sectors are going to be the biggest affected. No. Right. So what evidence is it that the economy is going to pick up? If anything, we're headed toward a recession. What kind of idiots would put something like this?
Well, I don't know.
This will be good for Republicans if it turns out that the economy magically turns around and they win the election.
Okay.
Pay me for my analysis.
I guess so. Yeah, I don't know I guess if you really pressed them on it, they'd probably run away, I suppose. But yeah, well, sure. But it's just, we just said if the economy picks up. Yeah, but you just laid out 100 reasons why there's no chance in the world that the economy is going to boom the way it would require to do this, right?
Yeah. There was even greater Democratic and independent support for Trump's approach to immigration, and immigration is one of the worst analyzed whole thing you have. You look at the top line, you ignore what's going on. We've already explained to you, they like what he says, they hate what he does.
Yeah.
Suggesting
Famous
opposition
now.
attacks on his controversial deportations aren't resonating. In total, 49% of voters approved of the administration's handling of immigration versus 33% who disapproved, which is different than every other poll out there.
Mm-hmm.
And they have another caveat. The poll was in the field for 3 weeks, ending before the LA protests, the No King stuff.
3 weeks
before
and still
all of
didn't
that. It's
capture
untested
that.
how the events affected voters' views.
Very slow.
I'll give you something perhaps more relevant, and that is that Fox News and others find Trump is completely underwater on immigration at this point. And so, no, the stuff they have is just flat out wrong. And
but it is
not
MAGA.
only that, it's not timely. I mean, nobody looks
Yeah.
at a poll that's taken over a month that was more than a month ago.
That's one of the
And
reasons
come to
not
conclusions.
to do mega
That's exactly
polls.
what Politico does, because it looks better for Republicans if they do.
That's that's a weird situation, and I suppose that there's no faster way to do an 8,000 person mega poll, whatever the hell that is supposed to be. But then, as you pointed out, one, why do it if the results aren't terribly different, and two, if they're also not going to be able to do it in a timely fashion, what good is that? And three, sometimes events get the better of you, but everybody knew what was coming up last weekend. And honestly, if you're planning an 8,000 person mega poll, you might want to have it, have at least part of it in the field and overlapping when large scale news changing events are happening.
Right. And so again, the whole caveat about don't go by one poll. Here's a perfect example why.
Not that one. Holy cow.
So this is strength in numbers from G. Elliott Morris. Here are two big takeaways from the data I'm about to show you. Americans split about protesters, but oppose Trump's response more. Trump's approval ratings on immigration and deportation slide into the negative. Gee, that's not what they found in this big poll.
Not at all.
Here's all the data, all the relevant polls published in one shareable spreadsheet screenshot. And so,
I see it.
no, this doesn't follow. I'll send you the screenshot so you can look at it for yourself. But do you approve of the president handling immigration? -7 AP Nork, -11 Quinnipiac, -15 Washington Post, +4 YouGov Economist. Oh, look, YouGov says it's positive. But do you approve of the way he's handling deportations? That same YouGov poll finds -11. Perfect example of I like what he says, but I don't like what he's doing.
Yes, I guess so. It's the way they express it in the form of their questioning pattern.
Right. Or YouGov. Do you approve or disapprove of deploying Marines and the National Guard to the LA area? YouGov, -13.
Yeah. Not a winner. I assume that he thought it would make him look super strong, but one of the issues is, well, like with Virginia, right? If you were doing this only in Virginia instead of nationwide, and you said, well, where should we send the Marines? Well, I guess it would be less effective to send them to the Tidewater area because that's where the Marines normally are. But deploying them against a civilian population, don't do it in a gigantic population center that's going to be able to swing elections or polls, right?
Yeah.
So the biggest, send them to LA.
I mean, if I were going to send the military, I'd send them to Virginia Beach.
Yeah, I guess.
But I'd send
one,
the Navy.
they'd be in the beach. Two, and two, they're already there. It's a lot cheaper. That's true, right? Dispatching the Marines and National Guard to LA, big logistical headache, nowhere to sleep, right? No food. That was the story for the first couple of days. Hampton Roads, Norfolk, Newport News, they know their way around.
They do?
Yeah. Not the California National Guard. They don't. But.
I mean, if I were going to send the military to take over a place, I'd probably send them in Connecticut to Groton,
Yeah, right. Start with what you're familiar with.
That's where they build the nuclear subs.
Right.
And they're already there.
Yeah.
And the U.S. Coast Guard is right there.
That's true. Makes it easy. Trump forgets that there is a Coast Guard, I think. He largely writes them off in the recounting of their branches of the armed forces. Space Force gets more respect than the Coast Guard from Trump. Too bad, because I like the coast a lot better than space, to be honest. It's very cold.
Right. So there was speaking of primaries, There was a big convention for the Democratic Party in Wisconsin where Ben Wickler released his control of the party. You know, he stepped down.
All right.
And by the way, you know, I like Ben, but I know Ken. So Ken, the head of the Democratic National Committee,
right? Ken, not
which
Ben.
has nearly no effect on elections, is in turmoil. Doesn't have any money. People are not liking his slow, steady approach. Lots of backbiting. It's Democrats. Mm-hmm. So what effect that has on elections, I have no idea. I just know that it's feeding the gossip columns. And there's wistful buyer's remorse. Maybe we should have picked Ben. But in any case, here's why. This is a quote from a speech.
Yes.
Somebody talking at the Wisconsin Democratic Party may well have been the new chair, I don't know.
Oh.
Issues people have had with Democrats across the country. Quote, there are some questions I'm hearing a lot out there. Why aren't Democrats fighting back? Where are our leaders? Why is this party broken? But here's the thing. The people across the country, they aren't talking about Wisconsin. In Wisconsin, the Democratic Party works. Look at where we were 7 years ago. We didn't have a majority in our court. The maps are rigged. We were on the verge of supermajorities in both chambers. We only had 2 statewide elected Democratic officials, but look at us now. Mm-hmm. Governor Governor Evers, Senator Tammy Baldwin, Lieutenant Governor Rodriguez, Attorney General Call, Secretary Godlewski, on the verge of majorities in both chambers, majority on the Supreme Court. We fought our way back. Does that sound broken to you? No. And reporter Jan Schaefer writing this up says he's got a point. Democrats in Wisconsin may have their own set of challenges, but the state's experienced a rightward shift that some demographics and trends have suggested it might, and after being pushed to the brink by Scott Walker, have clawed back and are now in a position to compete for a trifecta. Mm-hmm. And maybe there's something national Democrats can learn from Wisconsin Democrats. I thought so. That's why I was a supporter of Ben Wickler for the chair of the Democratic National Committee without fully understanding what it does, and totally understood why they know Ken but liked Ben. I liked Ben. I didn't know Ken, so I would have voted for Ken. I would have voted for Ben, rather. Okay. Ken won, and Ken's now in trouble because he's not getting enough support, and everybody has their own opinion of where things should go, and it's the Democratic Party, and Will Rogers was right.
Yeah. I mean, you made a good reminder right at the beginning. Typically, the DNC does not do most of the things that people who get upset about the DNC elections think they do. So they're chiefly in charge of running the next, the primary schedule and then running the next Democratic National Convention. And day-to-day politics and policy stuff and supporting the fighting back, et cetera, that people are looking for comes from elsewhere. But there are other ways to organize nationally to do those things too. It's typically not what the DNC does, and the RNC doesn't really do it either. But maybe the RNC looks like they're contributing to leadership because they're handed talking points from the Republican leadership if they have the White House, absolutely. But even when they don't, they're much more about launching attacks and coordinated attacks at that, and whereas the DNC doesn't really participate in that angle of politics. Maybe they should, I don't know, but you would very quickly run out of money doing it. That's certainly the case. Though it turns out they run out of money anyway, so who knows? But the Democratic Party is just not built the same way as the Republican Party, and it's difficult to tell who does what in the Democratic Party, mostly because a lot of those functions are hidden, and it's difficult to tell who does what in the Republican Party because there's only one function, and it's attacking Democrats, and everybody does it with equal fervor, even if that's not what they're supposed to be doing.
So to follow up on a topic we talked about before you were otherwise indisposed for a week.
Yes.
Remember Terry Moran?
Yes.
Now fired from ABC, now has his own Substack.
Yeah.
And just about his first post, the very first one was, okay, I'm independent now. And the second one was, Senator Murray is right. We will lose this democracy if we don't use our voice. All and defending him is John Harwood, who had this piece Trump is objectively bad for America. Why won't more journalists say so?
Oh.
I'd be derelict in my duty as a reporter if I obscured the truth. And he writes,
What?
duty compels me as an objective journalist to report that Donald Trump is a bad man doing bad things.
Holy
mackerel. Do you think you can spot a contradiction in that sentence? Can an objective journalist really call the American president a bad man? No, there's no contradiction, and yes, I can.
Well.
Objectively.
Wow. What does it take to get more of this?
Right, exactly. I went into, Terry Moran, John Harwood, you got to go independent and not work for a corporation, basically, is the answer.
I guess so.
I went into this line of work to learn how the world works and share with what I've learned with readers and viewers. So I watch, read, listen, interview. My senses are not limited to the ability to observe events, examine data, and spell words correctly. As with everybody else, moral sensibilities formed over a lifetime tell me the difference between right and wrong, and more than ever, the moral sense belongs in my work, my objective work. It's plain to see Donald Trump and MAGA, in fact, endanger what makes America great. Stating that bluntly is the most important truth I can tell.
Well.
And then he says, Trump's conduct has made the last decade different if you believe in the fundamental elements of the American experiment. It's bad to relentlessly lie to your constituents. It's bad to corrupt government for your self-enrichment. It's bad to damage the rule of law by denying due process, defying court orders, and seeking legal vengeance against political opponents. It's bad to appoint unqualified sycophants and kooks to run major departments. It's bad to handcuff elected representatives. It's bad to fracture alliances. It's bad to pursue your objectives with threats of force. It's bad to wreck planning by businesses with capricious shifts in the terms of trade. It's bad to incite violence. It's bad to upend the lives of civil servants. It's bad to summarily terminate foreign aid. It's bad to jeopardize the health of Americans by casting doubt on medical treatments proven to protect them. It's bad to disseminate racist smears. It's bad to set mass agents upon international college students. It's bad to send officers to lurk outside courtrooms. Trump has inflicted every bit of this on America. It's all kinds of bad. And then he refers to Terry Moran and says, in the Post, Moran called White House aide Stephen Miller a world-class hater and said Trump uses hate for self-glorification. John Harwood, wouldn't have used the same words, but his underlying sentiment rings true. Miller displays his dark malevolence with demagoguery and obvious lies to justify mass deportations. 4 days after Terry Moran's post, Trump confirmed the utilitarian approach it described by calling off aggressive raids targeting very good longtime workers on farms and hotels. Miller's malevolence subsequently won out as the administration reversed course again. So I support what Moran said is what he's saying here.
Well, and in grand style, however, it's all so crazy, it just might work.
Yeah, well, that's Chuck, and I'm waiting for Chuck Todd to write a similar thing. I think he'll write it the day before Chris Cillizza does, but haven't seen it from either one of them just yet. I
will say this, for all the problems that others understand better than I do, but keep complaining about, so I echo it, with Substack, it is drawing some interesting writers to their platform when they're finally fired from the one that they became famous on, and then they're
it's the easiest one to go to because it's all set up already.
Yeah,
they may or may not stay there.
Yeah, I don't really know, and it's the most viable immediate alternative for somebody who, particularly, who's been in the business long enough time that they have, come to expect a certain income level and realize, it's all cut off now. I need somebody who can help me monetize this work. Substack will do that, particularly for a name brand like these guys, and it's not as easy to convert into dollars for the rest of us. But it's no fault of theirs.
Substack is to Medium as Excel is to Lotus 1-2-3.
I think so. Perhaps so. All right. Well, we'll see whether they stay there a
some
long
people
time
love Lotus 1-2-3, but
Yeah. Well, it is true.
Netscape Navigator isn't around anymore.
That's right. Yeah, the Ask Jeeves folks are very into it. But all right. Well, that was pretty good. I mean, we've been waiting for that for,
we have
100 years, but
we've been saying it, and now they're writing it.
Now they're doing it. So I have to say, well, in that case, I hate Substack. So something's got to make me annoyed with this.
Right. Public notice also on Substack. Some of them have their own, vertical, so you can't see that that's where it is, but that's where it is.
Right. Every time
Liz
I see
Dye writing on public notice,
sure.
Judge rules that anti-woke is just racism. You can put lipstick on a pig, but it's still a rancid bigot. I mean, I like when opinion people say this, but I like it even more when objective journalists say it. Because they know it as well as everybody else, and for some reason they self-censor.
Yeah.
Because they want to keep their jobs.
Yeah, that's true. And then for most of their careers, there was a lot better argument at saying, well, look, both of the parties work within certain boundaries and, they're more or less comparable, but that has been falling apart for a long, long time. And they'd been derelict in saying so. Yes. So I guess they have to do it with additional verve and gusto now to make up for that lost time. And well, I wish they hadn't lost the time, but I'm glad they're not delaying and getting to it now.
Right. And the last thing I'll leave you with, which we don't have time to go over, is a New York Times list of the following actions of Trump's that reach the level of impeachable offenses. And there's at least 8 or 9 of them. I understand it won't happen, but it's nice to have the list in one place.
Yeah, I'd like to see that. Maybe I can
send it to you. It's at the bottom of the list.
I'd like to acknowledge that I see it. There we are. I do. Third time be the charm. That really would be remarkable. It was already
you need Democratic majorities now after the 2026 election. Might that happen? Yes.
Yeah.
But we'd have to take the Senate.
Accidentally arresting Republicans.
We'd have to start by taking the House, but it'd be really helpful to take the Senate. And no, you're not going to get a big enough majority to make it happen, but it's good to have that all out there.
Right. It wasn't going to happen the first 2 times. I mean, the impeachment could, but the conviction, they came close.
Yes, you can impeach him. We didn't say convict.
Yeah, right. Sure, go ahead and do that. And, we're going to have to start thinking about it, certainly. And it'll become an election issue.
If the economy turns around. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, well, if everybody maybe Trump will make so much money in crypto that he'll just give it out like John Rockefeller, dimes on the street corner. And then the economy will turn around. You can't buy anything because there's 150% tariffs on everything, but still. Okay, well, it's a very big if. Well, thank you, Greg. And our week together is over already. But thank you for restarting the show with me here and for giving me a list.
It felt like it was only a day.
It did, didn't it? Well, I need another vacation. All right, welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. And now it's just me. And I've been away for a week, so I don't have anything to tell you. I don't know. I did put a couple of items away during the week with some trepidation. But by the time I read this thing, will it still be relevant? I don't know. But, since we did the whole week that way, and a lot of them were, somewhat evergreen, I thought this, will likely stand the test of time and will help explain some of what's going on now. Also, perhaps a little bit with Tulsi Gabbard as well, even though I don't think she makes an appearance in this article. But I grabbed this thing from the New York Times on, I don't remember what days or what date anymore. This is actually from well before my departure for some reason. But I didn't park it there beforehand and just not get a chance to read it onto the record for the recorded shows. I don't think I saw it. But this one, I think, still nonetheless important enough to add to the record. Once champions of fringe causes, now in a, quote, trap of their own making. This is an article by Glenn Thrush, Alan Feuer, and Adam Goldman, dated originally June 8th. So it's been some time. It's 11 days now, though many of those days were on vacation. But the subheader tells us these top leaders at the Justice Department and FBI, and you know who they are struggling to fulfill Trump campaign promises often rooted in misinformation and conspiracy theories. And that's the big problem here. The triptych image offered up to us here are Kash Patel, Pam Bondi and Dan Boingo Bongino, who, wow, is he scowling in his photo? Pam Bondi continues to weekly smile, as does Kash Patel, but I don't know whether Bongino does that at all. Anyway, here's the story. Dan Bongino is where we start. The intense, that explains it, and voluble media personality tapped by President Trump to be a top FBI official, not usually a great pairing, appeared on Fox News last month to deliver news that should not have been news. Jeffrey Epstein, he said with glum resignation, had not been murdered after all. And for MAGA types, that's cause for dramatic music. Usually they are pretty sure that he had been murdered. And by the way, as it turns out, I spent a lot of the past couple of days within about, a mile or so as the crow flies. And there were no crows there, by the way. But as the crow would fly, if there were any crows there, from his hideaway island, which he no longer owns. Because he's dead. But the estate doesn't own it anymore either. Little St. James, which was a private Virgin Islands islet that he held for whatever reason, and then used it for, the vast majority of his crimes, which was a little creepy, but I could not see it. That was fine. Great St. James was in the way, thankfully, and that's all I could see, and I never had to lay eyes on Little St. James. Anyway, it's just sort of interesting and creepy overtone to the whole thing. But as with the rest of us, they found out what we all knew. Jeffrey Epstein actually committed suicide. I've seen the whole file, said Mr. Bongino, sitting next to his boss, Kash Patel, the Bureau's director. He killed himself. Investigations into Epstein's 2019 death in a Manhattan prison cell found serious management errors, but no evidence of criminality. And remember, 2019, that was Trump. And what can I tell you? Yet, Mr. Trump, once a friend of the financier accused of sexually abusing dozens of teenage girls, has long suggested Mr. Epstein was silenced by shadowy clients of his sex trafficking ring. In a 2023 episode of his popular, maybe, podcast, Dan Bongino, now the Bureau's number 2 official, and boy is he a number 2, implored listeners, please do not let that story go. And so now he finds himself, committed to trying to, explain how there's no evidence whatsoever for the things that he made a career of prior to this. Well, please do not let that story go. They obliged. A Trump-allied podcaster suggested the FBI leaders were, quote, beholden to some unseen powers. Powers. We're going to get the horror dramatic out for that one. Sure. A former FBI agent who has been critical of the Bureau posted a parody of a law firm ad with Mr. Bongino standing next to a sign that read, Trust Me and Bro Consulting. And I haven't seen the graphic, but I have a sense from that headline that it's probably just not that convincing or very good. But okay, it's an example of the things that the conspiracy-minded are doing with their time and probably the aid of AI. Tucker Carlson, also much in the news of late because he fought with Ted Cruz, interestingly enough, about the action against Iran and Ted Cruz's apparent support for engaging Iran directly in war, and they had a widely shared exchange on what I guess passes for Tucker Carlson's current show, which was bizarre and had much of liberal, progressive, blue sky, rooting for injuries. I just hope both teams have a good time. So I don't know what to feel about this. They're really bickering with one another, but it was pointed out. This is somebody did say this is how easy it is for a journalist to pop the as they call it, the BS bubble here, right? When they come and they snow you like that and talk about how easy it's going to be to win a war against Iran or all the things that they're pretty sure Iran is doing, even if no one else really thinks there's any intelligence to prove it, right? And you just probe a little bit, the whole thing can explode. But apparently, I don't want to give any credit to Tucker Carlson for doing that, but there it is. It was a good point. It is easy to do. All right. But back to the semi-organized thoughts over at the New York Times. Tucker Carlson, a friend of Mr. Bongino's, said Trump appointees were making a huge mistake, promising to reveal things and then not revealing them. But I'm not certain whether Tucker Carlson meant the huge mistake was that they really did have this information but were now refusing to reveal it for some other reason, or whether the big mistake was promising to reveal things that they should have known when they said it weren't ever going to be revealed. They're not revealable because they don't exist. Alex Jones, who is still alive, a founding father, as they call him. This is not a good idea to use those terms with him. A founding father of the modern conspiracy movement, referred to Mr. Patel's own handling of the Epstein case as flat out gaslighting, I'm sure is how it sounded when he said it. Do be careful putting the words founding father next to Alex Jones. I know that they thought they were saying founding father of the conspiracy movement, but as they are rewriting American history entirely, if you just focus on the January 6th event alone, you can see that. But given that they're rewriting that history and that he was involved in that history as well, the possibility of referring to him as a founding father could come back to bite you, I think. Anyway, not the thrust of this article. By the way, neither is the suggested editor's picks that you should be reading according to the gutter material here. Not gutter, but well, I think that they call it the gutter. The Dallas Cowboys cheerleaders get a 400% pay raise. Wow. That and of course Alex Soros marrying Huma Abedin, also over the weekend. So all of those very important Democratic figures not out at No Kings protests, but instead at a wedding. So ill-timed from that perspective, but I bet they had set that date long before they knew. It's not their fault. Now, again, Mr. Patel and Mr. Bongino, whom we are here to learn more about, partisan showmen placed in positions previously held by people with greater experience, let's say, earned their, shall we say it in the Latin, bona fides, earned their bona fides in Mr. Trump's camp. And again, here, being careful, maybe terminology you don't want to use. They don't have bona fides. They don't. I understand that you think, well, bona fides in the Trump camp, which means being a clown, being an idiot, being malleable about presenting facts, lying whenever necessary to support the boss. Those are the bona fides, but just don't say that they have them. They don't. But, okay, so for a turn of phrase, they earned their bona fides in Mr. Trump's camp. How? By promoting conspiracy theories, making promises of what they would accomplish under Mr. Trump when he returned to power based on fictional or exaggerated premises, pledging to reveal deep state secrets and vowing swift vengeance on their enemies. And that's the really dangerous part, of course, the swift vengeance on enemies. It doesn't necessarily have to be based on any evidence that they find or even evidence that they manufacture. They could just say, I didn't find any evidence, I didn't manufacture any evidence. We're just going to arrest and or jail and or execute or exile or whatever the following enemies of MAGA. And that'll make people happy all by itself. It has now fallen on Mr. Patel, Mr. Bongino, and Attorney General Pam Bondi to make good on the promises, explicit and implied, or show how hard they are trying. But they are running what amounts to a conspiracy theory fulfillment center with unstocked shelves, critics say. I don't know if that's the best analogy. It works around here because I happen to know what a fulfillment center is. But yeah, it's just to say the warehouse that fills your order when you call or you order something in Amazon or something. So basically they're running an Amazon conspiracy theory Amazon clearance center, clearance house, but with no product to offer. Patel, Bongino, and the other leaders are caught in a trap of their own making, said Russell Muirhead, a politics professor at Dartmouth College who has studied the role of conspiracy theories in American politics. The world they helped create a world in which conspiracy destroys facts is now the world they have to inhabit, he added. And I bet they thought that was going to be really cool, inhabiting it too. And now they're finding out just how difficult it is when you're dealing with, MAGA wackadoodles as your audience. And also, of course, other influencers find out that there's money to be made grifting the whole thing. And if you're not going to continue to excite them with made up content, they will. And if that means turning them against you, if it's worth money, they're going to do it. Mr. Trump himself campaigned on the spurious idea that immigrant criminals had invaded the United States like a foreign army. But when courts began to reject that notion in a series of deportation cases centered on those his administration claimed had criminal records, his supporters blamed the judges, not him. He has flirted so often with the QAnon conspiracy theory, which falsely holds that prominent Democrats like Hillary Clinton are dangerous pedophiles. Many followers still cannot fathom why Mrs. Clinton and other plotters are not in prison. It must have incensed them to no end to see them celebrating this wedding in the Hamptons. I think, was it in the Hamptons? I don't know. I think all weddings like this are in the Hamptons, but maybe not. Anyway, instead they were partying. What happened to the prison? Why didn't they round them up? Why didn't they use a drone strike against this wedding? His supporters are wondering. One former Republican congressional staff member with ties to the White House, speaking on a condition of anonymity for fear of being targeted, said that the president's courting of far-right conspiracists had stoked expectations, creating a never-ending cycle of demands. The person likened it to feeding red meat to insatiable sharks or zombies. It's an interesting way of putting it. Yeah, I had some, and now I can't recall what I was thinking. Over the weekend as I was reading this thing and saying, I would have used a different analogy besides insatiable sharks or zombies. It was, and now I'm blanking on what it was, but you get the idea. It's a reasonably descriptive metaphor here. But as Ms. Bondi learned the hard way during her first weeks in office when she promised new revelations about the Epstein case and then faced a furious backlash when the materials she released were a dud. Anxious about any criticism that could erode her standing with Mr. Trump, she dispatched FBI agents and prosecutors from the Justice Department's National Security Division to scour the archives. Officials familiar with the situation said they found little, but are still digging, according to Mr. Bongino. Mr. Patel and other officials have claimed that releasing new material is difficult and governed, by the need to protect witnesses and Mr. Epstein's victims. The billionaire Elon Musk suggested another explanation in the wake of his falling out with the president, which he's tacoing from, by the way. Mr. Trump is in the Epstein files, he wrote on social media way back when, about a week ago, I guess, or 2 weeks ago at this point, without providing evidence. That is why they have not been made public. Spokesmen for the Justice Department and FBI did not return requests for comment. Mr. Patel and Mr. Bongino have limited their interactions to friendly podcasters or conservative outlets, claiming that the mainstream news media can't be trusted to convey the truth. But those engagements also reflect an understanding that sustaining support on the right is essential for their survival, according to administration officials, right? If Laura Loomer finds out that you're not doing enough to feed the conspiracy monster, she'll turn against you and drum up donations to her own operation by targeting you. That's that's how you make money in this Trump universe, and how you gain influence by making more money and becoming more famous. And that's when Trump pays attention to you. Mr. Patel and Mr. Bongino have limited their interactions, right? We said to friendly podcasters, etc. Support on the right is essential for their survival. I've been putting out the truth my entire career, Mr. Patel lied for some strange reason to Joe Rogan, the immensely popular podcaster who endorsed Mr. Trump, to explain his comments about the Epstein case. Why would I risk all of it on this guy? So you could try that one. But many people, including Mr. Jones, were not buying it. Damage control, he growled on his own show. The tension between practicing politics based on conspiracy theories and having to govern extends far beyond the FBI and the Justice Department's problems with the Epstein case, and those elevated to power by Mr. Trump know that the number one rule is that he is never wrong, and it is their role to absorb the criticism that cannot be aimed at him. Days after the backlash over his Epstein comments, Mr. Bongino offered other promises, new investigations into other episodes that have gripped the president's base. The discovery of cocaine in the West Wing, way back when, during the Biden administration. The leak of the draft Supreme Court opinion overturning abortion rights in 2022. Oh, yeah. And the discovery of pipe bombs near the Republican and Democratic Party headquarters before the January 6th attack on the Capitol, an unsolved crime that has already consumed significant law enforcement resources. During another appearance on Fox, Mr. Bongino said the Bureau was, quote, closing in on some suspects in the planting of the bombs, while claiming that, quote, no one seemed to show any interest in this case. In fact, of course, investigators had conducted around 1,000 interviews, reviewed video evidence, and chased hundreds of tips before he even arrived. Mr. Trump, far from distancing himself from fringe characters in his party after retaking office, has drawn them closer. And here's the first mention of Laura Loomer, who has baselessly claimed that the September 11th attacks were, quote, an inside job, and suggested school shootings as a whole, I guess, were a ruse. This woman, believe it or not, has become a regular visitor to the White House with outsized influence on personnel matters. But you already know that because you watched during the campaign as she suddenly began traveling with Trump to debates and campaign stops and was in the position to get the coveted last word in his ear before he hit the microphone for a long time, before finally other people prevailed on Susie Wiles to get her the hell out of there. But she's not disappeared entirely, and she's making a comeback. In a lengthy social media post, Suzanne Monk, an activist who pushed for the pardon of January 6th rioters, wrote that the Trump coalition was fracturing into two groups. There's Camp Be Patient and Camp Demand Results. And that may or may not overlap with the divisions that we're seeing with respect to the idea of launching attacks against Iran. I don't know whether Camp Be Patient and Camp Demand Results divide the same way as Camp Yes Bomb Iran versus Camp No, I thought we were going to end all the wars. But it would be difficult to predict, but interesting to know. Anyway, Ms. Monk said she was firmly in Camp Demand Results, right? No breaks for anybody. And called on the leaders of law enforcement agencies to immediately begin arresting deep state criminals even before completing investigations into their actions. Because what do you really need that stuff for? Stop touting the false idea that you have to, quote, build an airtight case before arrest, wrote Ms. Monk, who clearly has no interest in constitutional principle, who demanded new investigations into the assassination attempts against the president and the 2020 election. Her views closely tracked with X users. By this, I would mean ecstasy users, but they mean X, the Twitter thing, who have plastered comments on Mr. Bongino's account after recent media appearances. And the piece at this point is illustrated with a photo of Suzanne Monk. Very interesting. And by the way, uses too many Z's. There are two Z's in Suzanne Monk. And, wow, she's an interesting looking figure to say the least. What can I tell you? You'll have to skim the article and take a look. Emerald Robinson, a former White House correspondent for Newsmax, made her frustration clear on social media. Dan Bongino and Kash Patel know they destroyed their credibility by claiming that, quote, Jeffrey Epstein killed himself, unquote. So now they're trying to offer up 3 investigations you don't care about to misdirect you from the Epstein files you do care about, she wrote. Sad, borrowing from her hero, Mr. Trump, sad. it is perhaps unsurprising that some of the most significant pressure has come from the January 6th rioters and their backers. This is interesting to me as I'm reading through this and looking at, I guess for all the people who think that they haven't learned, that certain people haven't learned their lesson about dealing with Trump, like Columbia University, the more concessions you make, the more you learn that making concessions to Trump doesn't actually help you win anything back, right? I think it's interesting. All the things that he's done for the January 6th rioters, pardoning them, releasing them from prison, having charges against them dropped, prosecuting their prosecutors, firing the agents who investigated them, and they still are not satisfied. The January 6th rioters still want more conspiracy juice from Donald Trump. It's interesting that he too hasn't really figured that lesson out. Anyway, it is perhaps unsurprising that some of the most significant pressure has come from the January 6th rioters and their backers. Mr. Trump's grant of mass clemency was not merely an effort to clear their names, but, as we said earlier, to rewrite history, to advance their shared contention that he had won the 2020 election, the irreducible core of the political movement that returned him to power in 2024. So just pointing out here, the writers of this article do understand, or say they understand, that he is trying to rewrite history. So if they know that that's a project in progress, you should give a moment's thought to whether or not you want to call Alex Jones a founding father of anything, Just saying. I don't think you're turning him into the founding fathers by saying that. I don't think it's automatically going to be adopted. I'm just saying it's something to think about if you're already in the camp where you're open to the idea of expressing what's going on here as rewriting history. Well, okay, then be aware of, what you might accidentally hand them as a weapon. The pardoned rioters have emerged as the backbone of camp demand results. That's the amazing thing here, right? It's never, well, you did this huge favor for me, therefore I will give you more flexibility. I'll be in camp, be patient. You performed miracles for me. I will now, give you the leeway you need to hopefully perform more, but I'll give you time to do it. No, they're in camp demand results. There's no satisfying these people. You might as well have left them in jail. The pardoned rioters, as we mentioned, have emerged as the backbone of camp demand results, questioning Mr. Patel and Mr. Bongino almost from the moment they took office, which I'm sure, Patel and Bongino are like, you idiots were in jail last week. I should have left you there. We'd never be hearing from you now. But what sorts of things are they demanding? Arrest the Democrat criminals or resign, wrote a different Philip Anderson than the one we may know. One of the January 6th defendants himself. The one and only thing we are telling you to do and you refuse to do it. Why are they listening to this guy? I don't know. One of the first complaints was that the two had put a senior FBI agent named Stephen J. Jensen in charge of the Washington field office, which had overseen the inquiry into the Capitol attack. Mr. Jensen is a hated figure among the pardoned rioters because he was in charge of the Bureau's domestic terrorism operations section on January 6th and played a key role, therefore, in responding to the attack on the Capitol. But the group's grousing goes much deeper than Mr. Jensen to demand that the FBI reveal details about what the rioters believe is its involvement, the FBI's involvement, in fomenting the Capitol riot. But there is no evidence to back that up, according to a Justice Department Inspector General's report last year. But they demand it anyway, essentially. The J6ers, as they are commonly called, are also outraged that Mr. Patel and Mr. Bongino have not yet opened investigations into the federal prosecutors who worked on cases related to the riot, even though many of them have been fired, transferred, or marginalized. But they wanted to see them prosecuted instead, not just losing their jobs. Whether by design or happenstance, Mr. Bongino, a former mid-level Secret Service agent and New York City police officer, has emerged as the Bureau's principal public defender, in addition to his official role running the Bureau's day-to-day operations. The strain seems to be taking its toll. I gave up everything for this. I remember this from before we left, before our break. He lamented in another one of his Fox appearances, I stare at these four walls all day in D.C. by myself. There is a basic recognition among the president's advisors and allies, at least in private, that expectations have been allowed to get too far out in front of the facts. But bridging the gap between campaign messaging and reality is never easy, particularly in an administration that espoused maximalism, bravado, and bending the truth to fit its tactical objectives. That is a good point. And, somewhat difficult to deal with, I am sure. Julie Kelly, a prominent right-wing journalist. I don't think I've ever heard of her, but I didn't hear the last one either. Recently appeared on Stephen K. G.B. Bannon's podcast, The War Room, to make the pragmatic case for finally letting go of the Epstein saga, which she describes as a freakish obsession among Mr. Trump's diehard supporters. It is a little odd to figure out why they are so obsessed about that, but I think it was because they thought it would indict Bill Clinton, and that's what they wanted. Hi everybody, it's me, David. Let's change things up from the old fundraising pitch for just a minute and talk instead about how you can be a part of our show. If you've got a smartphone or any other electronic recording device, why not sit down and record a segment for us? Read us an important article and give us your take. Read one of your own original essays, or even just give us your commentary on something you'd like to share that's important to you. Then send the file to me at kagrox@gmail.com and I'll try and work it into the show. Short segments, a few minutes in length, are easiest to fit in. And of course, I can't always guarantee that I'll be able to play everything, but if you've ever shouted at your radio or TV about something you wish was being covered, here's your chance to change that. Make the show your own. Send your submissions to me at kagrox@gmail.com. All right, welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. We got another segment for today, and we're still in the middle of this very long piece, or well, we're making it longer, of course. By we, I mean me, making it longer in expanding on our reading from the New York Times here. I'm going to have to, what was our headline on this one again? Just as a reminder, once champions of fringe causes, now in a trap of their own making, focusing on Dan Bongino, Kash Patel, and Pam Bondi, now having to live up to their promises to deliver on wackadoodle conspiracy theories, or the investigation of wackadoodle conspiracy theories, or maybe not even the investigation of them, but just the punishment of the people that the wackadoodles behind the conspiracy theory like to think are guilty of some kind of thing, one way or another. The point is we want to see some Democrats end up in jail, even if there's no evidence that they should be there or that anything that was ever alleged against them even happened. But okay, we left off hearing from Julie Kelly, who is a prominent, it is said that she is a prominent right-wing journalist, and she a little more nattily dressed than Suzanne Monk, wackadoodle supreme over here. And, you know, you can't judge a book by its cover, they say, or, well, what they say is don't. They don't say you can't, or that it isn't accurate. You're just warned not to do it, but sometimes it'll pay off just fine in doing it. I don't know. I heard a good joke over the weekend that's an older one now, I think, but it was worth repeating, and it has to do with Ted Cruz, who was mentioned earlier. But I guess it's a little bit like don't judge a book by its cover. Well, maybe this blows that up. I think they were asking this person, whoever it was, why is it that people take an instant dislike to Ted Cruz almost as soon as they meet him? And his answer was, it saves time. Which, they were trying, well, what characteristics is it, or what thing is it that he does that makes people hate him instantly? Well, I don't know, but you're going to discover it eventually. So why not save time and take that instant dislike? Anyway, it's about judging a book by its cover, but you know what? It works. So anyway, Ms. Kelly, Julie Kelly here, on she's photographed here at CPAC in 2023, says she's the one that said this whole Epstein thing is a freakish obsession and you should basically give it up already. She says she understood the fixation on Epstein and the still smoldering obsession with the FBI's investigation into connections between Russia and Mr. Trump's 2016 campaign, but she also said both cases were unlikely to result in prosecutions and should be sifted out in favor of newer, more urgent inquiries. But letting them die will be hard, she acknowledged, leaving Mr. Patel and Mr. Bongino to grapple with the fallout. It's a mess, Ms. Kelly said. I think people felt like there would be some arrests or at least some hearings where some of this stuff would be made public. What you end up with are extremely frustrated, disillusioned people who trash others who have put their careers on the line to do the right thing. Except it was never the right thing, and they never should have promised that they were going to do it. And so I'm not particularly worried about the ultimate results for people who put their careers on the line for garbage. Just thought I would point that out, but that's maybe where Jill Kelly and I differ. What can I tell you? All right, a couple of other things that we might find it worthwhile to share, and I gotta find a new version of Pocket to take a look at and comb back to see what other interesting ideas I had to share with you. And then, of course, Greg's got some ideas of things we want to put on the record as well. Let's see. Here's a short-ish one that I happened to catch in the last day or two, reported by the folks at Gizmodo, and in particular, one folk, Matt Novak at Gizmodo, had this interesting addition. Silicon Valley execs, as it says here in the headline, join the Army as officers, but won't have to attend boot camp. It's a interesting thing, maybe a little bit akin to the sort of strange honorary sheriff's deputies, reserve sheriff deputy positions that are essentially sold to people in various locations around the country. Most recently, I think, of note in Culpeper County, Virginia, where the sheriff who sold them was recently pardoned by Trump because, hey, you sold something, so that's great. This is weird, but not without precedent, and I think we'll see whether they talk about it at all in the article. But here's the weird and worrisome part of it. The tech industry is fully on board, but the rank and file won't have to do time as grunts. And I don't think that means that convey to me what's actually going on here. What, the rank and file won't have to do time as grunts? The rank and file, you mean the Army rank and file? They do have to do time as grunts. The rank and file of the tech industry, they're not involved. It's the top execs in the industry. So what's going on here? Well, the U.S. military has recently announced that 4 executives from, why is this, this is a very weird, fine. I've clicked on something that I think is unique to Gizmodo that helps you save different portions of a page, and I can't get rid of it. Okay. The U.S. military recently announced that 4 executives from some of the top tech companies in Silicon Valley have joined the Army Reserve, that's one difference, as direct commissioned officers. And the next part sort of explains what's going on here, but I wanted to pause for a second. This was being discussed on social media more out of a sense of, surprise, if not necessarily outrage, but some people probably outraged. The idea of directly commissioning officers in the Army who have not only not gone through basic training, but no command training, officer candidate school, nothing like that. No Army doctrine training. They're just being commissioned as officers. And what officers as well? They're being commissioned as lieutenant colonels, which is, more than would be, I think, ordinarily necessary in order to get this job done. Although others in the comments on social media pointed out, this is not without precedent. When you need to recruit specialists into the armed forces and have them working at a command level, or at least working as officers, they do this sorts of things. Like, if you're familiar from watching MASH, right? They needed to recruit, i.e. draft, surgeons and doctors and dentists into Army service, and it doesn't do the trick to have them as enlisted. You need them as officers, but then they drop them in as captains and majors if they have no Army experience, and just leave it at that. You're an officer, be happy with that. Anyway, here they need tech expertise, but they do things in a weird way. They don't go and recruit or draft tech people, actual tech workers, rank and file, for instance, you might call them, from the tech industry. Instead, they're taking in as volunteers, chief technology officers from some of the big Silicon Valley firms and making them lieutenant colonel on top of it. And then saying also, okay, you'll be in the Army Reserve, but you don't really have to do Army stuff. You don't have to go anywhere or train or learn how to be in the Army. You just work remotely, but pretend you're a lieutenant colonel. So that seems a little weird and cush and not entirely necessary in order to get what they want out of, CTOs at tech firms. They probably could just call them on the phone and say, I want you to consult with us, and leave it at that. But instead they're going to make them Army officers, Army Reserve officers. The other weird part about it, though, is in the second sentence here. The move is part of a push to speed up the adoption of technology in the military. But as the news outlet Task and Purpose points out, it's pretty unusual. Certainly the way they're running it is pretty unusual. That the objective itself to speed up the adoption of technology in the military. I don't know that there's been a huge problem getting the military to say, ooh, technology, new stuff, let's use it. I don't think that's been a problem, but whatever, they want to speed it up. But if you then say what we'll do is we will take the CTOs, and here's who's going in here. The Army said in a press release, the 4 executives are Shyam Sankar, CTO of Palantir, already a, Defense Department contractor. Andrew Bosworth, CTO at Meta, Facebook. Kevin Weil, Chief Product Officer at OpenAI, and Bob McGrew, an advisor at Thinking Machines Lab and former Chief Research Officer for OpenAI. So 2 OpenAI affiliates. And that makes more sense. Meta, I don't know. Does that really make any sense to have this CTO there? I mean, I'm sure he's very techie and stuff, but is there a lot of Meta integration that they need to do with the armed forces? Palantir, they're already a contractor, so maybe. But what's I thought was interesting there is, my guess is if you want the Army to speed up the integration of technology, so you take 4 people, one from Meta, one from Palantir, one from OpenAI, and one from Thinking Machines Lab and formerly of OpenAI, and then say, help us integrate technology into the armed forces faster. My guess is that these 4 lieutenant colonels will put their heads together and say, I got it. What you need is more technology from Palantir, Meta, OpenAI, and I guess probably some more from Thinking Machines Lab. That is our considered opinion. And why don't you just admit what you're doing and just go buy the stuff already and stop making them lieutenant colonels. The 4 men are being commissioned at the high rank of lieutenant colonel as part of a program called Detachment 201, the Army's Executive Innovation Corps. That's it. Detachment 201, the Army's Executive Innovation Corps. As Task and Purpose notes, the men will get to skip the usual process of taking a direct commissioning course at Fort Benning, Georgia. And they won't need to complete the Army fitness test. And I could see them waiving the fitness test, probably, but, it's not a bad idea to take it and see if you can pass it. But that's the interesting thing. Like normally, yes, there are direct commissionings of officers for special circumstances as necessary. But when you do that, you at least say, I need you to take the direct commissioning course at Fort Benning, Georgia, so that you can be taught the things you need to know as an Army commander that you won't have gathered through actual experience, but we'll try and catch you up. But with these guys, they're like, screw it. We won't even catch them up. Why not? The Army didn't respond to questions emailed Tuesday, but said in a statement published on its website, for some reason, that, quote, their swearing in is just the start of a bigger mission to inspire more tech pros to serve without leaving their careers, showing the next generation how to make a difference in uniform. You just collect 2 paychecks at once. That's how you do it. Their role in the Army Reserve is to, quote, work on targeted projects to help guide rapid and scalable tech solutions to complex problems, as the Army puts it. But that doesn't seem to mean very much. The new reservists will serve for about 120 hours a year. Really? So 10 hours a month, according to the Wall Street Journal, and will have a lot of flexibility to work remotely, which I bet there's a lot of people in the Army that would prefer to do things that way. They'll work on helping the Army acquire more commercial tech, though it's not clear how conflict of interest issues will be enforced, given the fact that the people all work for companies that would conceivably be selling their wares to the military. In theory, they won't be sharing information with their companies or participating in projects that could provide them or their companies with financial gain, according to the Journal. Silicon Valley has always benefited greatly from ties to the U.S. military. Silicon Valley companies were bringing in $5 billion annually from defense contracts during the Reagan administration. Something that the average person may not remember about the 1980s, but it's always been an uneasy alliance for consumer-facing tech companies, especially over recent decades. That's all changing, according to many folks who align more with President Donald Trump, who was once considered a shameful person to represent in polite company. As Andrew Bosworth, the CTO at Meta, who is joining the Army Reserves, told the Wall Street Journal, quote, there's a lot of patriotism that's been under the covers that I think is coming to light in the Valley. Wow. Bosworth and his buddies can be a bit more open about their goals now that Trumpism has been more normalized in the president's second term, but they also run the risk of hitching their wagons and the reputation of their companies they represent to a president who's famous for acting recklessly. After all, this is the guy who just a couple of days ago told Tehran, a city of 10 million people, to evacuate, and is heavily suggesting that he's going to get the U.S. into a war with Iran. Some people may think that's a good thing, and at the very least, it might be a wise business decision for some firms like Palantir to hope for war. But OpenAI and Meta have a lot of products that depend on buy-in from the general public, and we've seen guys like Elon Musk take huge hits to their bottom line after attaching themselves to Trumpism. And with Trump at the helm, any association with the Army is bound to be perilous in time of war. We all saw the viral videos of Trump's parade, right? It's a good point and an interesting way of attacking the issue. It's something they have the flexibility to do over at Gizmodo. So just thought that was an interesting addition to the news of the day here. All right, let's jump back to Pocket if it'll let us. No? Okay. We'll have to reopen the whole thing. And Pocket, I guess, no chance that they will improve the product given that they're about to close down in a few days. Anyway, look at this. Now, all right, it's taking its sweet time, bringing us back to the Pocket page. Let's see. Time to share a few more items. There's a short-ish one here that brings back the taco subject. Steve Bannon, writing over at the Rachel Maddow Show blog on Russian sanctions, Trump's new position has taco written all over it. The American president went from making hollow threats to abandoning the underlying idea behind the threats. And I really enjoyed this, mostly really for the mention of the 2 weeks gambit, that once again, Trump has promised something in 2 weeks. And of course, the 2 weeks have passed. 3 weeks, in fact, have passed. And naturally, nothing has come of it. But again, I do wonder why there isn't open laughter. I guess now they're afraid of arrest. But why there isn't, suppressed laughter, at least, among the press corps whenever he says he's going to deliver on something or something's going to happen in 2 weeks. Like, there should be at least, tittering going on in the background. Why is that not happening? So this time it was on Russian sanctions, and it's happening over and over again. The American president went from making hollow threats to abandoning the underlying ideas behind the threats, says Steve Bannon, after months of public assurances about Vladimir Putin's alleged interest in, quote, peace. Donald Trump was asked in late May about whether he still believed this about his Russian counterpart. The Republican pointed to a deadline of sorts. Right, so the question is, do you still believe that Putin wants peace? I can't tell you that, but I'll let you know in about 2 weeks, the American president said. Within 2 weeks, we're going to find out very soon, very soon. Okay, you knew that was going to fall to pieces and be a blatant lie because he said the words, 2 weeks. Well, that was exactly 3 weeks ago, says Steve. Since Trump made those offensive, I don't know. Maybe I think he's just as since Trump made those comments, but because Trump made them, I started reading the word offensive in, and it's not there. Since Trump made those comments at an Oval Office event, that starts with the letter O, the Russian offensive, there was that too. Okay. The Russian offensive in Ukraine has managed to get vastly worse, including an assault in Kyiv this week that included dozens of civilian targets. President Vladimir Zelensky described the latest destruction in his country's capital as among the most horrific since Russia invaded Ukraine more than 3 years ago. And even more than that, of course. It was as if Putin were effectively daring Trump to follow through on his sanctions threats. Evidently, the Republican prefers to ignore the dare. Politico reported this week, quote, Donald Trump suggested he will not hit Russia with more sanctions at the G7 summit, which I think Trump was at for about 10 minutes, if I'm not mistaken, saying Europeans should do it first and that sanctions cost us a lot of money. The EU and the UK are both pushing for more coordinated sanctions against Vladimir Putin's regime at the Canada-hosted gathering of leaders, but the U.S. president has so far refused to sign up to fresh action. What news did reach me about the G7 summit during my break was that he used the opening remarks to say it used to be the G8, but they threw Russia out, and that was a big mistake. And if I had been president at the time, it was even before I was in politics, I said, throwing them out is a very bad idea. It wouldn't have happened if I was president, and this and that and the other thing wouldn't have happened because Trump. Yeah. Asked specifically whether he was prepared to stand with Europe on new economic sanctions against Moscow at the G7 summit, Trump demurred. A joint press conference, a joint press appearance with British Prime Minister Keir Starmer was where Trump said he was prepared to see Europe, not the United States, impose sanctions. Don't forget, sanctions cost us a lot of money, the American president added. When I sanction a country, that costs the U.S. a lot of money, a tremendous amount of money. Not clear, by the way, what that's supposed to mean or how. I mean, there's business we can't do with them, and that costs private investors money, but it doesn't necessarily cost the United States money. But anyway, this is a guy who thinks that tariffs bring in huge amounts of money and it's going to make everybody rich when it actually does the opposite. So I wouldn't count on his understanding of the economics as meaningful in any way. So let's review recent developments. And here's the history of it. In late January, just 2 days after his second inaugural, Trump told Russia that if it failed to end its war in Ukraine quickly, and remember he was going to do it on day one. It's very easy, very easy. Well, then the White House would have no other choice, that's the quote, would have no other choice, but to impose new economic sanctions. Putin proceeded to ignore the threat, and Trump failed to follow through. Taco, I would add there. In early March, it happened again. And I guess I've actually clicked on the link there accidentally. But in early March, it happened again. Trump gave Putin a choice, sanctions or a ceasefire. And the Russian leader again ignored his American counterpart. Trump again failed to follow through. In late March, Trump once again said he was prepared to impose economic penalties on Russia. In keeping with the pattern, Putin ignored the threat and Trump failed to follow through. In early May, for the fourth time in 4 months, Trump wrote online, quote, If the ceasefire is not respected, the U.S. and its partners will impose further sanctions. And for the fourth time, Russia expressed indifference. For the fourth time, Trump failed to follow through. That's a 4-pack of tacos right there. In late May, amid countless headlines, remember them? About how angry Trump was with Putin. I can't understand. He's gone crazy, right? The Republicans signaled he was prepared to change course, but when? In 2 weeks. So that was your answer. Ahead of time, in mid-June, Trump did change course in a way. As Russian attacks against civilian targets worsened, the American president went from making hollow threats to abandoning the underlying idea behind the threats, because he believes sanctions cost the United States a lot of money. To be sure, the White House's agenda is filled with reversals, and this posture might yet change, but at least for now, those looking for evidence in support of the taco thesis, the Trump always chickens out thesis, should look no further than this truly pitiful approach to Russian sanctions. It's a good point. And though Russian sanctions not often in focus for us, it's an issue. And of course, we had the opportunity to laugh in his face when he says 2 weeks about anything. And if you can disguise your laughter or point to a guy next to you and say it was him, then you might be able to get away with that inside the briefing room. All right, let's see what other issues I might be able to shoehorn in here. We had Greg share a couple of things with us as he was exiting. And let's see, a couple of things here. One, interesting, a new Truth Social post from Donald Trump saying the crooked Fox News polls got the election wrong. I won by much more than they said I would, and they've been biased against me for years. Really? They are always wrong and negative. It's why MAGA hates Fox News, even though something. When was that from? All right. Is that what, I don't know. Apparently it's something he's doing right now. Mad at Fox News. He's had a couple of rounds with them in the past. We'll see how long this one lasts for. All right. So there's two things to quickly put on record. One, I won't, neither one will I really have the time to read. So, the one that Greg mentioned on his way out the door, I'll perhaps save for discussion tomorrow. I'll review it in between now and then, see whether the opinion piece, whose piece is it, over at the New York Times, could the third time be the charm with respect to impeachment and removal, it says, for Donald Trump. This from Tom Edsall. Okay. Could it be? Sure, it could. Will it? No, probably not. But, any Tom Edsall piece is also going to take us about 3 hours to get through, but very often worth doing and at least worth musing on it on our own on the way through it. But the other one that I thought was interesting and deserved mention before we go out the door, supermarket tycoon, which one? I don't know, says he'll close down shops if Mamdani wins. So, you got the New York City mayoral primary going on here. And just as, certain, usually particularly wealthy weirdos did, in the past, although sometimes they were Republican weirdos. If Obama wins or if Biden wins or you name it, choose or Hillary Clinton wins, taxes are going to go up or they're going to do this and I'll leave the country. Didn't Rush Limbaugh famously threaten to move to Costa Rica at one point if I don't remember whether it was Obama winning. So these sorts of threats are made all the time and people will say, and if you raise the tax rates in this state, all the wealthy people are going to leave. But people don't leave New York all that easily for whatever reason. If you're mega wealthy, that's where you're going to want to have part of your home base. You might also own a pedophile island in the Virginia or the Virgin Islands, but keeping a New York base is important to these guys. But this, the Free Press writes, escape from New York. Business leaders say they'll flee if Mamdani wins. It only takes a handful of successful people to leave to decimate the city's tax base. Who said it? Bill Ackman. Bill Ackman apparently, I guess now considers himself a real political guru over having successfully driven out the president of Harvard that he drove out. But okay. So now I guess he knows exactly what every city in America needs for some strange reason. Olivia Reingold wrote this piece for the Free Press, and it goes on at some length. We're not going to have time to get through it all today, but just wanted to let you know that they're playing that same game again and threatening if people elect or nominate people that we didn't prefer ourselves, that's it. We're going to take our ball and go home. And considering that the idea is taking the ball and moving out of New York City, and for where? Where would they could go? There's lots of places you could go, don't get me wrong, but they've threatened this before, and it seems to be a big joke. And you tell me whether Bill Ackman is more at home in Abu Dhabi than New York City. All right. Well, after decades of running, what is it, Gristedes supermarkets? I'm so in tune with what they sell there. I don't know anything about it. Gristedes. You tell me, New Yorkers. The iconic Manhattan-based grocery chain, billionaire John Catsimatidis. Do I hope I got that right? I don't care. Says one thing could cause him to throw in the towel if 33-year-old socialist Zoran Mamdani becomes the next mayor of New York City. We may consider closing our supermarkets and selling the business. The 76-year-old entrepreneur told me, we have other businesses. Thank God we have other businesses. I don't worry too much about what 76-year-old billionaires say when they threaten, oh my God, I'll close my business and sell. Of course you will. You're 76 and you have $1 billion. You should have done it a long time ago. And good luck and good health to you. Go do it. Somebody else will sell groceries in Manhattan, I promise you. And it'll be fine. If you think you can sell the business, then can I still buy groceries?
You have been listening to Kagro in the morning with David Waldman.
These guys don't know how to do threats, and thank God they don't. Good. As far as I'm concerned, they can get the hell out, and I'm not even in New York. Just don't come to Virginia. We'll say that. All right. Time to hand things over to Justice Putnam for the West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. He brings it to you next right here on Netroots Radio. He's organized. He knows what he's doing. Let's listen to what he's got to say. We'll see you tomorrow.